I decided to do my presentation on superplasticizers. I thought superplasticizers were the most interesting because they turn essentially a solid, viscous concrete into a liquid form, essentially, by reducing cohesion amongst the particles and clumping. Superplasticizers were originally developed in the 1960s and used primarily in Japan and Germany, and the United States wasn't introduced to these until 1970s. This admixture is used for many reasons: neutralizing surface changes, dispersion, releasing water and cement particles, and primarily reducing viscosity to allow for higher workability. This allows the concrete to be more workable, more movable, but it requires stronger molds for the concrete to sit in, while also allowing for a shorter drying period or curing period and increasing strength in the concrete. Plasticizers are primarily in the sulfonic group and include compounds such as sulfonated naphthalene formaldehyde condensate, sulfonated melamine formaldehyde condensate, acetone formaldehyde condensate, and polycarboxylate ethers. These polymers are surfactant, meaning they're used as effective dispersants. Dispersants are essentially what makes liquids suspended in other liquids or solids suspended in other liquids not cohere together and separate more, meaning they flow more as a liquid. The dosage is dependent on what you're looking for in your concrete or on your project. Workability dosage ranges anywhere from 1 to 3 liters per cubic meter of concrete. If you're trying to reduce the water cement ratio, you want to go anywhere between 5 to 20 liters per cubic meter of concrete. This is determined by the marsh cone test. The marsh cone test is essentially running a fixed quantity of cement paste and particulate content of superplasticizers through a standard funnel, and based off of this funnel and concrete test, they give you a recommended optimal dosage for what you're looking for. If you exceed the dosage they recommend or go anywhere beyond a recommendation that is given on dosage, it leads to a segregation problem, making the concrete not even a concrete anymore, essentially, and more like a conglomeration of a few, conglomerate of many things thrown together, like aggregate and the liquid and the water you use, and it's just basically a soupy mess. The desired results that you look for when using a superplasticizer is an improved strength that comes with it, and also a shorter curing time, which is usually about a week or 7 days, depending on how much concrete you pour, where you pour it, weather, temperature, among other things. Another desire you look for is reducing absorption. So after the concrete has cured, it is less likely to absorb water in a freeze-thaw cycle and then have it freeze, expand, crack the concrete, and make it essentially need repairs. The problems that come with it are the window that the concrete does stay more plastic and workable. It's typically only 30 to 60 minutes that the concrete stays in its liquid flowing form. That is why this plasticizer is usually added while the concrete is being mixed at the job or pour site, not while it is at the batch plant before it leaves. Another problem with this plasticizer, it requires super strong sealed forms to be poured into because it flows so much like a liquid. If you had weak sealed forms or forms that don't have as much compaction, it could just flow out and you're gonna have concrete where you don't want concrete, and it's gonna mess with your form and everything. I personally believe that superplasticizers are one of the most useful admixtures we have, because it's used in so many things, from roadways to sidewalks to pouring the base of a shop, certain foundations. It's pretty much a cure-all if you have concrete that is not workable, or you have a space where you can't get concrete all the way back to where you're trying to pour it. And almost every time that I could find personally, this admixture has done exactly what it's needed to do when it's used correctly. When it's used too much, the concrete becomes too liquidy, doesn't pour right, doesn't flow right, doesn't cure right. And if it's used too little, the concrete is not workable enough, and you have a problem where you can't get the concrete to where you need the concrete. So that is why I chose superplasticizers, and that's why I believe they're some of the most useful admixtures out there. Although they do have a problem with the cost, from what I found, it's typically around $54 per gallon of admixture. When you think about that, it's not too expensive, but when you think about how much concrete you're pouring and how much you're paying per cubic foot of concrete to start off, it kind of gets a little pricey if you're using it in many batches of concrete. Thank you.